Spring released emergency updates to fix the Spring for Shell 0-day remote code execution vulnerability, which leaked prematurely online before a patch was released. Yesterday, an exploit for a 0-day remote code execution vulnerability in the Spring framework dubbed Spring for Shell was briefly published on GitHub and then removed. However, as nothing stays hidden from the internet, the code was quickly shared in other repositories and tested by security researchers, who confirmed it was a legitimate exploit for a new vulnerability.Today. Spring has released a security advisory explaining that the vulnerability is now tracked as RCE 2022-22965 and impacts Spring MVC and Spring WebFlux applications on JDK9. The exploitation of the vulnerability also requires a patchy Tomcat, when application packaged as a war, and the Spring Web MVC or Spring WebFlux dependencies. The vulnerability impacts Spring MVC and Spring WebFlux applications running on JDK9+. The specific exploit requires the application to run on Tomcat as a war deployment, reads the Spring advisory. If the application is deployed as a Spring Boot executable jar, i.e. the default, it is not vulnerable to the exploit. However, the nature of the vulnerability is more general, and there may be other ways to exploit it. Spring says that the vulnerability was responsibly disclosed to them on Tuesday by Pluto's MISJAM3I of Ant Group FG, and they had been developing and testing a fix that was expected to be released today. However, after a security researcher published the full details online on Wednesday, they pushed the release of the patch forward ahead of the planned release. The Spring versions that fix the new vulnerability are listed below, with all except Spring Boot available on Maven Central.